So let me talk to you about Andrade a little bit. Because beyond this incident, since the moment he got there, you and I have pointed out, he's not really made for this.
No.
He was pretty good in Mexico as La Sombra. I was watching a lot of that stuff back then. Other than the time when he had Zelina Vega on the main roster and she was kind of the star, I don't think his run in America has worked well. He can wrestle good and he's in great shape, but his promos are unintelligible. And he hasn't really shown, Sammy was right in one aspect, he hasn't really shown that he can get over. They gave him Chavo, they gave him an assistant, they've constantly had him in the mix with various things, and no one cares. So with all that said, and knowing that this guy wants to be fired, and knowing that he probably has a really nice contract for a long time coming, and it may or may not be a loss to AEW if he wasn't there, how do you handle this now if you're Tony Khan? How do you handle Andrade?
Well, that's the thing is, I'd just leave him home, but I'd pay him. Because it's not whether he shows up or doesn't, whether he's on television or not on television, whether he's on their events or not on their events, it's not going to impact their business from a financial standpoint one iota. Nobody's buying a ticket to see him. Nobody's turning tickets back in because he's not there. He's on the card. If you fire him, then you've set a precedent where, you know, anybody that wants to get out of there can do something to fucking get fired. And at this point, Tony's going to have to realize he's been taken on a lot of these guys. He's signed long-term Pac. He's got Pac for fucking 5 years, right? Jesus Christ, we've seen everything he can do, and you can see that in 3 weeks. It's the same thing every time.
And this is on the heels of everything that is or isn't going on with Malachi Black and Buddy Murphy.
Yes, with the house of the black folks over there, Malachi Black and Buddy Black and their little friends. They want to leave. But the problem is, if he lets them, then anybody now from now on that Tony signs is going to know that they can fuck up and get out of there. So, unfortunately for Tony, the thing to do is, you know, suspend them if they do something, and then, but at some point, you're going to have to start paying them again, but still don't bring them back. Put them in the deep freeze. And for a lot of guys, they won't care.
What is that, Ring of Honor, the deep freeze?
No. I mean, they aren't seen in public. A lot of guys won't care. Going to the mailbox every week, getting a fucking check and never be seen in public, that would be a dream job for some people. But most of these guys these days are so markish, they would definitely rather take a large cut and pay and, you know, or no money and work and just ruin their career. Because if you've got them for 2.5 years, if they have to sit home and they can't do anything else, everybody's going to forget about them. Except if you're not going to do that to a Punk level person. He sat at home for 7 years. People didn't forget. But Andre, and I would assume he couldn't work in Mexico either if he's under contract to AEW. So if guys are specifically trying to get fired to go back to the other company, if Tony, you know, wants to stop that, he's going to have to set the precedent that you might get sent home and you might get paid, but you will be in the federal witness protection program. If I've got you for long enough, people will forget you ever existed before you can ever get in a wrestling ring again. And then Tony, meanwhile, takes his lumps and pays that money out for being stupid enough to sign a lot of these people to begin with on the say-so of a bunch of his currently suspended EVPs.
What's to stop Tony, and he wouldn't do this, but doing what Vince did, maybe not as cruelly, but just a mass release of some of the people that either don't want to be there or don't want to be there and aren't really helping anything anyway. I mean, if Andrade goes back to the WWE, it means nothing to WWE, it means nothing to AEW. He's just one of these wrestlers that exists. He'll go back and forth, but it won't cause anyone else to go back and forth in terms of a viewer or someone buying a ticket.
You've set the precedent, though. Our contracts don't mean anything. We will fire you if you fuck up bad enough on purpose, and we know you're doing it on purpose. or will let you out of it if you're just so unhappy, well, then that just means that you're a goddamn audition. You're bringing somebody in for a while. If the contract means nothing and it's a 3-year contract, but they decide in 3 months Tony's an idiot, can't book, hate the locker room, everybody's mad at each other, want to get the fuck out of here, I'll just punch somebody. Well, you can either get fired and be rewarded with what you want, or you can sit at home for the next 2 years and 9 months until everybody, thinks you're fucking dead.
But to look at it maybe from a Tony Khan perspective, not to say this is the right thing or not, but here you have a guy making a good amount of money who hasn't really meant much to the business of AEW. No one has bought a pay-per-view because of Andrade. His merch sales aren't, anything to talk about. There's nothing that really is tangible with Andrade. There's nothing that lends itself to growing your business. So you have a guy that's making a lot of money, not really what you want. WWE used to have the ability to cut guys after 90 days, you're gone. Or actually, they can cut guys at any time now that I think about it. That's the other thing. Beyond this whole issue with WWE, and if Tony finally, and Tony's not the guy to do it, but if they had an executive there or someone who could put their foot down and say, look, this guy did want to go back, and we don't want him, we're letting him go, no one else is going to get this kind of fucking treatment. Cut this shit out. I don't know. I mean, is it really worth it to hold on to this guy for another 3 years? Andrade? Does he mean anything to either company?
First thing, they just said to the two guys, well, don't fight on Tuesday. Okay, we won't. And on Wednesday, they fought.
Well, that's why I'm saying it can't be Tony and it can't be Mega, because people there don't see them as people that need to be respected as bosses.
My response to that is that it was the time for Tony to do that before it became public that the guy wants to get fired. He should have fired him before it. I can't believe that once a year, at least, Tony has not sat down and looked at his talent roster and looked at the contributions or lack thereof that some were making, and look at the bloated nature of the nobodies that he just has everywhere, and look at the people that couldn't sell pussy on a troop train, much less goddamn have a great wrestling match, and it's just an indie darling that was of the moment, and somebody got, fucking hysterical and signed him up, and clear everybody out once a year. Go up and down your entire roster. Contracts coming up, people on per nights. Who do we fucking need? Who do we not need? Who's worked out? Who's just fucking hanging around? Who's not worth a shit? Okay, these contracts, they're going to be due in 6 months, but I shouldn't have signed them to begin with. So these guys are the ones that are going to be putting everybody over, trying to get some other people fucking over, whatever. But he hasn't done a house cleaning in 3 years. A couple of the people that really fucked up bad, like that fucking Jimmy Havoc and Jelly and whatever, they were allowed to matriculate out.
Well, no, Jimmy Havoc was cut. Jimmy Havoc was the one guy cut early on, if you remember.
Yeah. Well, that's why I'm saying. Well, and then he didn't even cut Jelly. He couldn't even spread Jelly. But he quietly let them, wander off back into the fields where they came from. But a company, especially of that size, with that payroll, that once a year, he has not gone through and said, okay, what was I fucking thinking? Who talked me into this one? I got to get rid of them too, whatever, and cut off some fucking deadwood. But he won't, and he hasn't. So now, but that was the time before people figured out publicly which ones and who want to get fired on purpose to get the flock out of Dodge. He should have been firing them.